My neighbor knocked on my door and said, "Since you have a bigger driveway, we'll be parking our cars here from now on." When I refused, he scoffed. "It's just sitting empty. Stop being greedy." I smirked, pointed at the tow truck arriving, and said, "Perfect, because the city just approved your cars for removal." I live in a quiet neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois. My name's Jake, and I've been here for about 5 years now. It's a peaceful place, where everyone knows each other, and we all get along pretty well. That was until the new neighbors moved in next door. It all started on a sunny Saturday morning. I was in my garage, tinkering with my old Chevy, when I heard a knock on the door. Wiping my hands on a rag, I opened the door to find a man standing there. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair and a smug expression. "Hey there," he said, not bothering to introduce himself. "Since you have a bigger driveway, we'll be parking our cars here from now on." I blinked, taken aback by his audacity. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, crossing his arms. "Your driveway's bigger than ours, and it's just sitting empty most of the time. No point in it going to waste." I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. This is my property." He scoffed, rolling his eyes. "It's just sitting empty. Stop being greedy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Look, I understand parking can be a hassle, but that doesn't give you the right to use my driveway without permission." He smirked, as if he knew something I didn't. "We'll see about that." With that, he turned on his heel and walked back to his house. I watched him go, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I had a bad feeling about this. The next morning, I woke up to find a silver sedan parked in my driveway. My blood boiled. I marched over to my neighbor's house and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I went back to my house and called the non-emergency police line. They advised me to have the car towed, as it was on my private property. So I did just that. The tow truck arrived within the hour, and the car was gone. Later that day, my neighbor came banging on my door. "Where's my car?" he demanded, his face red with anger. "I had it towed," I replied calmly. "You can't park on my property without permission." He fumed, clenching his fists. "You'll regret this." Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated. Every time I had a car towed, another would appear in its place. It was like a game of cat and mouse. I installed security cameras, hoping to catch them in the act, but they were careful, always parking when I wasn't home. One evening, I came home to find not one, but 2 cars parked in my driveway. I'd had enough. I called the tow company and had both cars removed. Then, I decided to take things a step further. I contacted the city and inquired about installing a fence around my property. After getting the necessary permits, I hired a contractor to build a sturdy fence with a locked gate at the entrance of my driveway. The day the fence was completed, my neighbor stood on his porch, watching with a scowl. "Think this will stop me?" he shouted. I didn't respond. Actions speak louder than words. That night, I heard a loud crash outside. I looked out the window to see my neighbor trying to ram the gate with his car. I called the police, and they arrived promptly, arresting him for property damage and reckless behavior. He was charged and had to pay for the damages. After that incident, the parking stopped. Peace returned to my home. But the story doesn't end there. A few months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my neighbor's wife. She apologized for her husband's behavior and explained that he had been struggling with anger issues. She thanked me for my patience and informed me that they were moving away to seek a fresh start. I never saw them again. Looking back, I realized that standing my ground was necessary. It's important to set boundaries and protect what's yours. But it's also crucial to understand that sometimes, people are fighting battles we can't see. In the end, I hope they found the peace they were looking for. As for me, I continue to enjoy the tranquility of my home, grateful for the lessons learned during that tumultuous time. 3 months passed after they moved out. Things calmed down, mostly. I patched up the gate, cleaned up the tire marks, and let the cameras keep rolling just in case. For a while, life was quiet again. I almost forgot about them. Until one morning, around 6 a.m., I heard a loud knock. It wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind that made your gut twist. I opened the door. It wasn't him, it was his brother. I recognized him from that one weird barbecue they threw where half the neighborhood didn't show up. Tall guy, heavier build, same smug eyes. "You got my brother arrested," he said, stepping too close. "No, your brother got himself arrested," I said, not moving. He smirked. "We're family. We don't forget stuff like that." Then he just left. No yelling, no more threats. Just that sentence. The next few days were uneventful. Then I noticed things, small things at first. My mailbox was bent one morning. My garbage can tipped over and full of someone else's trash. I figured it might be kids. Maybe wind. Then it got worse. My fence lock was smashed. A long key mark stretched across the side of my truck. Every little thing pushed me closer to the edge. I called the police, filed a report, showed them the footage. But since the guy wore a hoodie and avoided the cameras, they said they couldn't confirm it was him. One night I sat out front in my garage, lights off, waiting. Around 2:30 a.m. I heard footsteps on the gravel. I watched as a figure walked up my driveway, hunched low, and stopped near my truck. That was enough. I flicked the light, stepped out. "You've got 5 seconds to get off my property." He bolted. I chased, but he was fast. All I caught was the sound of tires screeching as a black SUV sped off. I installed better lights, newer cameras. I posted signs. But then it got even more twisted. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photo of my house from across the street. Written on the back, "Still watching." I started carrying protection. I parked my truck in the garage every night. I double-checked every window and door. I wasn't sleeping much. I told the police again. They made a note but said without real proof, they couldn't do anything more. Then I got a call at work. Unknown number. "You should have let them park," the voice said. Then hung up. I changed my number. Didn't matter. They called again the next day. And the next. Then came the fire. It was around midnight. I was half asleep on the couch when I smelled it. Burning plastic. I ran to the garage, smoke pouring from under the door. My garbage bin was on fire, flames licking up the wall. I grabbed the extinguisher and sprayed until my arms ached. I called the fire department and cops again. The footage was useless. They'd thrown something over the camera. But the police finally agreed this was serious. They started patrolling the street at night. I filed for a restraining order against the brother, even though he hadn't been seen on my property since. That slowed things down. Nothing happened for a couple of weeks. Until I got a package. No return address. Inside was a toy tow truck. Burned and melted. That's when I stopped waiting for the law to solve it. I started my own digging. And what I found next made everything worse. I started with what I knew, his brother's name. Took me a few hours of digging online, through court records, social media, anything I could find. Turns out he had a record, nothing violent, mostly vandalism, a DUI, unpaid fines. But I also found something else. His wife had filed for divorce a few months ago. Domestic issues. A small restraining order that got dropped later. She still lived nearby, about 10 minutes across town. So I drove over one afternoon and parked down the street. I didn't plan to confront her. I just wanted to see if the SUV I'd chased off was there. It wasn't. But I did see her coming out with 2 kids, looking over her shoulder like someone might follow her. I figured she might have answers, so I left a note on her car. Nothing aggressive. Just a line saying I was the guy next door to her ex-brother-in-law and I needed to talk, just to understand what was going on. 2 days later, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside, a handwritten letter. She said she was sorry. Said she knew things had gotten bad. Claimed she had nothing to do with it, and that she and the kids were scared of him too. She wrote that he'd been staying with different people, couch surfing, burning bridges. She didn't know where he was now, but last she heard, he was angry I ruined his brother's life. Then she added something that chilled me. Be careful who you trust. He doesn't always act alone. I read that line over and over. Did she mean friends? Was someone else helping him? The next twist came fast. I got home from work one day, and the lock on my front door was scratched to hell. Not kicked in, just scraped and chipped like someone had tried to pick it. The cameras showed nothing. I checked every window. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. It was almost like they wanted me to know they could get in. I replaced the locks. I added sensors to the windows. I even got a dog from a rescue, a big shepherd mix named Rocky. He barked like a beast at any little sound. A week later, Rocky was gone. The gate was open. The latch wasn't broken, just swung wide open like someone had called him out or tempted him. I searched the whole neighborhood, put up signs, called shelters. Nothing. I didn't sleep much after that. My hand stayed close to the bat I kept by my bed. I was tense, jumpy, suspicious of everyone. Even at work, I checked the security cameras from my phone constantly. Then the biggest hit came. A letter from my mortgage company. Someone had tried to file a quitclaim deed in my name. Basically, they tried to transfer ownership of my house, forged paperwork, submit it like I signed it. They faked my signature. Filed it at the county recorder's office. I don't know how they thought it would work, but it was just enough to screw with things. Took me days of back and forth to clear it, prove it was fraud, lock everything down. I froze my credit. Reported it to the feds. Told the police again. But still, no arrests. That's when I found out what she meant. He wasn't alone. There was someone at the city office helping him. I caught it by accident. One of the clerks I spoke to about the forged paperwork slipped up and said, "Oh, is this related to the issue with the driveway dispute?" Nobody should have known that. That detail wasn't in any legal form. So I asked questions. Pushed a little harder. The clerk clammed up. Said she couldn't talk about it. I started going back through everything. Every small delay, every denied permit, the way the city had dragged their feet during the first driveway incidents. It all started looking suspicious. I had no hard proof, but something smelled rotten. Now I wasn't just dealing with a crazy neighbor's vengeful brother. There were people in places of authority that knew something, maybe even helped. That was the moment I stopped playing defense. I made copies of everything, letters, videos, documents. Sent it to a lawyer friend. Told him to hold on to it. Then I started tracking down every odd connection. Every name on every piece of paper. I wasn't going to just protect my home anymore. I was going to find every last one of them who thought this was just a game. It didn't take long before one of the names popped up twice. A city clerk named Marla signed off on both the original bogus quitclaim deed and a delayed permit rejection from when I tried to install the fence. That was strange. Clerks don't usually get involved like that, and she wasn't assigned to my district. I started digging. Her name was listed on a couple of housing disputes across town. In each case, something weird happened: permits denied, fake deeds filed, parking agreements suddenly contested. A pattern. I showed this to my lawyer friend. He told me I needed to be careful, that if this really was a ring of people gaming the system, this could be bigger than a crazy neighbor vendetta. I didn't care. I was done being the guy who played fair while others stomped all over the rules. I sent an anonymous tip to the local news. Then I sat back and waited. 2 weeks later, it hit the 6 o'clock report. The headline was something like, "City worker linked to forged documents and harassment claims." It wasn't much, just enough to rattle the right cages. A picture of Marla, an image of the city office building, a short interview with a man whose case looked almost identical to mine. The fallout was fast. The mayor got involved. Internal investigation started. And then, Marla was arrested. That should have been the end of it. But a few days later, someone threw a brick through my window at 2 a.m. It had a note tied to it. Should have kept your mouth shut. I called the cops again, but this time, I gave them everything, every letter, photo, camera clip, name, date, even my suspicions about the brother. They opened a full investigation. Finally, they traced the forged deed back to an IP address registered at a rundown internet cafe on the other side of town. Security footage showed Marla meeting with someone there 3 weeks earlier, someone wearing a hoodie, but the way he walked, the height, even the shoes, I knew it was the brother. They finally had enough to arrest him. When they did, it all came out. He'd been planning to force me into leaving. If he could get the fake deed filed, he'd claim I signed it over, and if I tried to fight it, he'd bury me in so much paperwork and false claims I'd have to sell. He wanted the house, not to live in it, but to flip it. Get back what he thought I took from his family. But it wasn't just him. Marla had been helping him for money. She had debts. A gambling problem. She wasn't the only one. 2 other people from city offices got fired. 1 got charged. The story hit the local papers. My street got quiet again. But something in me never settled. Because here's where I'll admit my mistake. When I made that anonymous tip, I also added a name to it that I wasn't 100% sure about. One of the city inspectors I'd argued with years ago during a fence height complaint. I was angry. Tired. I didn't know if he was involved, but I included him anyway. Turned out he wasn't. He lost his job. Even after the investigation cleared him, his name stayed tied to it in whispers. His wife left. He moved out of town. I tried to apologize. He never answered the letter. I got revenge. I exposed them. But in the process, I took someone else down who didn't deserve it. People like to talk about justice and payback like they're clean. Like there's always a clear line between right and wrong. But when you're in it, when you're scared, angry, tired from months of games and threats, you can't always see the line anymore. I kept my house. I walk my dog. I lock my doors. But I never look at my driveway the same way again. And when I see a car even slow down near it, my hand twitches, just slightly, toward my phone. That's what revenge costs. You win. But something in you doesn't come back whole.